Hello again everybody and welcome back to Test Flight in the F-86 Sabre. So at this point we've gone through the setup for engine start. Now let's go ahead and press through the engine start procedure itself and have a look at some of the ops checks that are associated with it. So let's go ahead and jump back into the cockpit. Okay, starting engine. Throttle off. Verified. Engine master on. Okay, so master on. Got it. Battery starter switch to starter and then battery. Let me read ahead because this is the part of it that going to get always a little bit rushed unless you know what's coming. So what I'm going to do is go battery to starter momentarily and then return it to the battery position. When I do that, I'm going to start getting RPMs building up on my engine. And that means that the starter, which I've got the master switch to on. That's going to apply power to the starter. And I've got the starter switch. Okay, yeah, well, the generator is the starter. So the generator switch is on. And it's kind of interesting how that works. The generator actually does double as the starter, which is kind of counterintuitive since I kind of ask myself, hey, what's powering the starter if the generator's powering the starter? And that's where the power unit outside comes in. The power unit provides power to the starter, not the battery system and not the aircraft. So that's how that works. So 3% RPM, then I move my throttle outboard using the home key. I don't know if I'll have to find a better solution for that, but throttle outboard at 3% RPM. Now, once I do that, moving it to the outboard position is going to open up the fuel cock. It's like a little cutoff valve for fuel, the main fuel flow going to the engine. So I move it outboard, fuel flow to the engine starts, and then within about 5 seconds I should get engine light off, or ignition of the engine itself. And that's another thing that does happen incidentally. In addition to the outboard opening the fuel cock, it also powers the ignition system and powers up the igniters. So within 5 seconds I should get an indication of engine light off, or engine ignition, by my EGT, exhaust gas or exhaust temperature, increasing. At that point, at 6% RPM, I move the throttle up to, again, this is done using the home key, I move it up to a position between off and idle. Then, once RPMs are up to about 25%, I disconnect the external power and start checking engine instruments and do a whole lot of other checks. So let's go and run through this. Okay, I've got master switch on. Let me go battery switch to starter momentarily, then back up to battery. Okay, RPMs 3%. Throttle outboard. Engine ignition 6%. Throttle to the intermediate setting. Okay, we went all the way to idle. Okay, monitoring my EGT. I spiked a little bit there. I'm above 700. No big deal for now. I think I have a limit of about 900 on the startup procedure. Okay, got good fuel flow. RPMs are coming up through 23%. I'm going to call for... Okay, gotcha. I'm going to call for disconnection of external power from the ground crew. That's F2. I need to get a better setup for that so that I'm not distracted. Okay, continuing up, I'm at 30% RPM. Okay, and I'm stable. So let's see here. Throttle, proper exhaust temperature between 600 and 690. It's a little below 600, but I'll take that. Low is better than high in this case, I suppose. Okay, oil pressure check. Now, okay, oil pressure check. Oil pressure, where would I be? I would be down here, wouldn't I? Fuel flow, RPM, oil pressure, hey, there you are. I have no oil pressure. That's never a good sign. Let me push the throttle up just a touch. That's, of course, not what I would do if I had really had no oil pressure. Okay, now I've got a little bit of pressure. I'll have to go back and investigate that. That's not what I would expect as normal behavior. I'll take it as is. I mean, I don't think there's... I think that's just the way that it's going to work. But I would definitely not expect it pegged right there on the very lower band at the idle position. I'll give it a few minutes and check it again in a second. Engine instruments check. So, okay, exhaust temperature still right there. Fuel flow is good. RPMs stabilized about 30%. That's about it for... yeah, that's about it. Wait a minute. I just had an epiphany here. Maybe I'm not getting AC power to this instrument. Let me... because right now... I'm not really... yeah, at this RPM, until I get up to about a little over 40%, my generator is not going to provide really any kind of a... it'll provide a little bit of a load, but not enough to really power the aircraft. Let me advance the throttle to about 40%. Slowly. Okay, this light... okay, that's the radar inverter light that just went out. That, well, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, does it? Well, my inverter in either case is on, so I'm getting AC power to all instruments. I would, in real world, I would probably abort this aircraft right now, but I'm going to press on. I think that's just the way that it is. Okay, drop tank selector switch, outboard on in jet or inboard on in jet. If I have drop tanks, I have nothing installed, so I'm going to leave it in all off. External power disconnected, got it. Generator warning light out. That went out when I advanced the throttles up above the point where the generator starts to provide a significant load. So, okay, got that. Throttle idle. Idle or just a touch above it just to keep the generator online. That may or may not be the right thing to do. Tell you what, I'm just going to pull it back to idle for the heck of it. Okay, hydraulic pressure gauge selector to normal. Okay, that's going to be the center position. Okay, flight control switch reset, check alternate on, warning light is out. I think I mentioned this before. When you have this light on, and this is the default setup, it's using the alternate flight control system. You don't want to use the alternate flight control system, you want to use the primary. So what you want to do is, like it said, flight control switch reset, and then check alternate on, light out. So let me go reset, light off, and release. So now I'm using the normal flight control hydraulic system. That's exactly where I want to be. Okay, now, flight control normal hydraulic system check. So what I mean, I told you it wasn't easy as firing up the aircraft and taxiing, although this stuff can be done extremely quickly though. Okay, flight control check. Flight control switch to normal. Got it. Control stick. Move and verify proper control surface movement. Okay, so ailerons. Okay, good controls on the normal system. Pressure after 5 seconds, 2850 to 3200 psi. Okay, so it did go down. Stabilizes back at about 2900 psi. Yeah, good to go. It's on the low range of that, but yeah, very normal. Got it. Flight control alternate hydraulic system check. Flight control switch to alternate on. So that's going to be back here. I want the alternate on position, so I go up there on that one. I've got my alternate system light back on. Okay, verified. Control stick, move and verify proper control surface movement. So ailerons, horizontal tails, good movement. Must have missed something there because I was expecting... okay, yeah, there it is. Hydraulic pressure gauge selector switch to alternate. Okay, so now here's the pressure on the alternate hydraulic system. Okay, it went down. Now it's building back up. And I'm looking for it after 5 seconds. 2550 to 3200. Okay, it's stabilized. Took a little bit more than 5 seconds, but I'll take that as good enough. Sometimes that'll happen. You know, in real life, if that happened, you know, sometimes a hydraulic system, that's normal for that to happen, for pressure to bleed down and then to sort of, not really this slowly, but pressure to bleed off a little bit as, you know, fluid is pumping through the system. Then it usually stabilizes. If it stabilizes this slowly. I might ask the guys to have a look at the hydraulic quantity gauge, which I'm trying to remember where it actually is on a Sabre, but there's the gauge on the hydraulic reservoir for the alternate system, and that could be a sign that it's just a little bit low on fluid. And of course, we're talking about a simulation here, but I'll just take that as normal operation for now and call that good. Okay, flight control switch reset, check alternate on, warning light out. So reset. Okay, light out. Flight control manual emergency override check. Hydraulic pressure gauge selector switch to alternate. Already there. Flight control switch hold at reset. Ooh, that's not it. I wanted hold at reset. Okay. Emergency override handle, pull to full extension. This could be tricky because I'm holding this switch. Can I maybe right click? I can right click, okay. I right click, pull to full extension, control stick, verify proper control surface movement. Okay, ailerons, horizontal tail. Got it. Flight control switch to normal, so I'm just going to release the switch. That's okay, that was a little tricky. Okay, back to normal. Alternate on, warning light on. I think that would have worked if I hadn't messed up the sequence there. Sometimes, like, I would have expected right-clicking to move it down to the left position, left-clicking to move it to the... right-clicking to move it to the right position, like the reset position, left-clicking to move it to the left position, which is the alternate on. It's the opposite, so left-click to move it right, right-click to move it left. That's like my worst nightmare switch right there. I have a feeling that would have worked, but alternate on, warning light on, pressure 3050 to 4000 psi, and that is, yeah, that's, and from what I've read, yeah, that is the normal pressure for this operation with the handle out. And emergency override handle in. Got it. I'll take that as good. I'll readdress that and see if that works any better on an additional try later on. Okay, pressure 2550 to 3200 psi. Did I miss something there? I might have. Flight control switch to normal, alternate on, pressure, emergency override handle in. And that might have been affected just by the sequence I messed up down here, but that should have bled back off. And then I do an automatic return to flight control normal system check. Control stick, move rapidly. I have a feeling that would have worked if the alternate on light had been out and if all this stuff had kind of gone right in the first place. I believe I did mess that up. Okay, so I'll take that as good. Alternate warning light out. Hydraulic pressure gauge selector back to normal. Got it. Normal indication 2850 to 3200. Good to go, in the green. I like it. Utility hydraulic system check. Now, in addition to the two flight control hydraulic systems, I have a utility hydraulic system that controls things like brakes. Well, specifically, they control the brakes, nose wheel steering, and the speed brakes. So to check this one, I go utility on the switch, speed brake out, and then in the neutral. In other words, just a full cycle of the speed brake. Yeah, that's right. So, okay, speed brake's out. Bringing them in. Back to neutral. And back into the cockpit. I would have had the crew chief backing me up on that. And pressure approximately 3000 psi. And just like I mentioned before, yeah, when you do stuff like that, the pressure tends to bleed off and then it usually just kind of snaps back into place a little bit more quickly than that. But yeah, stabilized at about 3000 psi. Good to go. Hydraulic pressure gauge selector switch to normal. Normal indications are there. Got it. Load meter and voltmeter check. Okay, for this check, I'm almost certain that I do need my generator to be at more or less full capacity. I'm going to push the throttles up to about 45%. That should get my generator running at normal capacity. Okay, now I'm going to check my voltmeter. I would be checking on this aircraft for, I read somewhere 28.5 volts. Although 24 volts does seem very reasonable. 24 volts is actually very, very common to see on a DC system, although 28 really is even more common to see on a DC system. I'll take that as good. I think 24 is where it's intended to be for this simulation, although I'm pretty sure 28.5 is what I'm looking for there. I'll take that as good. Load meter is a measurement of how much current is being drawn off of the generator. So as of right now, I'm only pulling, can that be right? I'm only pulling like 10%? I'm only pulling, yeah, 10% of the total load, which I guess that might be right. I don't have the bomb sight on. I'm not using my navigation equipment. I'm not really transmitting or doing anything crazy right now. That might be right, 10%. It's a pretty hefty generator too. Okay, I'll take that as good. Okay, and at this point, we are ready to taxi. So that's, in reality, 5 minutes tops procedure. Once you do it a few times, and once I do it a few times, I've got all the little stuff all the little distractions figured out now. So that's a 5 minute procedure tops. It's not definitely going to be the 15 to 20 second procedure that you might have been expecting, but I mean, to do it right, or not to do it right, to do it by the book. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Do it any way that you want to, but it's about a 5 minute procedure. And I'm going to put another break in the video here and come back next time around with the preparation and actual taxi, I do believe. And one note just on the oil pressure gauge, I did go back and figure this out. 1 psi is correct for the idle position, which is surprising. That's just one thing that I just learned about this type of engine that is kind of surprising. 1 psi is not a lot of oil pressure, but this engine doesn't need much at the idle position. It does increase somewhat once the engine is pushed up to higher RPMs. So thanks again for watching. I hope you are enjoying this, and I will see you next time.